All right, well, it's 10 o'clock, and we're going to call the meeting to order.
You won't even have to run.
Planning and Economic Development meeting will now begin. And first up, we've got BCA, DK Aviation Services, and they're going to review, and give us a review of what they do and how they do it.
Very good, thank you. So, quick introductions, and actually, if you want to hand out those. We've got a handout here. My marketing director lovely calls it a placemat, so if you don't want to make any notes on it, you can use it at your house.
Easy to wipe off.
Easy to wipe off, it's very good. I actually have pens that write on that so you can actually use these. So, very brief presentation, I'll try to make it quick, I know you're limited on time, so let's do a couple little housekeeping things here. First of all, just introductions. Hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at our statement of quals that we submitted a couple of weeks ago. My name is Michael Churchill. I'm an associate with BCA, and heard the comment over here, BCA, Bernier Car Associates, okay, because we do like acronyms here. I'm the Director of Aviation Services with this company. And then we have also with me Guy Ruel. He is with Dubois and King Engineers. So just quick background. I'm not going to get into a lot of background about our experience. You've got it on the placeholder here. You've also seen the quals, but just want to talk for just a brief minute about the two companies. So, well, first of all, you know, BCA, we are primarily an architectural firm. That's most of our business model in engineering. So our expertise really falls in what we call vertical. So buildings, hangars, terminal buildings. We also do educational facilities, healthcare facilities, etc. We do have a survey group. We also do construction management and municipal engineering. So kind of a broad base. But if you had to take a focus on our company, probably the best focus for us would be the vertical piece, the building size. We've teamed up with Dubois and King, and Guy and I go way back. We've worked together on projects 7, 8 years. So I'm doing major aviation development, primarily in the state of Vermont. He'll talk about that in a minute, about his experience there. But Dubois and King, they're more of a, I'll call them flat, you know, so they do basically pavements, drainage, grading, ton of aviation work throughout the Northeast, and a lot of depth there. Since we've known each other for quite a while, you know, we've been talking strategically, what does make sense for teaming arrangements, and I think it's a great, great connection here. So, you know, we can basically handle any sort of aviation project you've got. Myself, you know, I've done aviation here in New York for 35 plus years. What you're looking for here, an engineer to do a term agreement, I've done over a dozen term agreements, you know, all throughout New York. So good history there. Dubois and King also very, very familiar with the special, you know, requirements that come up when you're doing term work. We know fully well, working with GA airports, you know, you do everything. You know, we help you out with forms, we interface with the FAA, New York State DOT, we find grant opportunities for you, as well as execute the project. So when we were looking at this, you know, this RFQ that came out, you know, Guy and I went over and said, this really fits us well. You know, we've done the sort of work that you're looking for here. And we also know that what's really critical for you is, first of all, you need a firm that can do the work, and we certainly have, and we've done it over and over again. But also, what's really important is the team that you've got. There's some synergy here. You know, Guy and I have tackled some pretty tough jobs, primarily runway extensions. Those are always your biggest nut, right? You know, the environmental, public relations, just cost, convincing the FAA to put that much money in there. Why do I want to spend the money at a J airport? So we've tackled that issue over and over again. Not an easy fight, but it's something that can be done, can be achieved, and I know it's critical for GA airports. I know that's come up. We've heard that in the background. So a little bit later, Guy's going to talk specifically about some of those ideas and strategies that we have. But so that's about the team. You know, again, I've talked a little bit about the companies. We've been around a while. You know, we're established, we're seasoned. You know, BCA, Bernier Car Associates, we've been around since 1970, so we're approaching our 50th year. Dubois and King is already past the 50th year mark. So the focus again, for your purposes here, is really aviation, and that's what I do. You know, I've been doing it since my Air Force days. So I've been doing aviation for like forever. Guy is also steeped in aviation. He used to be the former administrator for the state of Vermont. He used to oversee all 10 state-owned airports. And I think the connection that we have here that's really going to be helpful for you is that I can represent the engineering side, the planning side, that's what I do, guys from the operations side. So he's the sort of person that says, that's a great idea, engineering-wise. What's it mean for running this airport? Does it make dollars and cents? How does it work with the operations here? And so you get these two pieces coming together, and I think it's a pretty strong and pretty powerful team. So what we've done is we've had discussions with various people here on the board. We've been to the airport. We've toured the airport. We've dug around a little bit, and looking at the RFQ as well. There's a few issues that have been identified there. So what I want to do, and I know we want to be limiting our time here, but I want to have Guy talk a little bit about some of the key things that we've noticed, that we've heard, and some thoughts that we have as we look at your airport and future development. So Guy, you want to talk for a minute?
Great, yeah, thank you, Michael. And yeah, thanks for having us here. You know, we looked over this RFQ. We go to a lot of airports. We work at a lot of airports. I've been doing aviation for over 34 years now. I'm a former Army aviator. Also a former Ronald Reagan had fired a bunch of air traffic controllers back in 1982 during the PATCO strike. I was deemed air traffic controller by the U.S. government at the time. Then I became an air traffic control examiner for the FAA, and then I became a pilot examiner. So why I say that is we bring not only the airspace and also the piloting component to this, we also bring, and what Michael of course brings to bear, I've worked with him for years, engineering some very, very difficult and highly politicized projects. And just to name a few recently, in Newport, Vermont, fact check for folks, Newport, Vermont had a 4,000 foot runway, very similar to here. A lot of trees, a lot of obstructions, a lot of issues, a lot of political, in some cases ill will, and a lot of positive will. We were able to extend that runway by 1,300 feet. We were able to do a brand new full parallel taxiway, cleared a 78-acre heavy cut of tree removal with what was deemed the last deer yard in Vermont. And so we were, the last. So we were able to work through the political and steer through the political components of that project. Recently, the FAA approved, and we've worked very tight period of projects. Recently up in Maine, Rangeley, Maine, they have a 3,700 foot runway. They needed 4,300 feet. I'm sorry, they have a 3,200 foot runway. They needed 4,300 feet for Life Flight of Maine to be able to fly in for critical care. We took on that project July, and we just submitted the grant application. And in that time frame, we did the runway length analysis, the master plan update, we did the full environmental assessment, we steered through all the political wills, regional, local, and we're able to get designed and permitted and out to bid a grant and submitted the grant application to the FAA, and we did that in a 9-month time period. 1,100 foot runway extension. So we're very familiar with runway extensions. So, one of the first things that I noticed, in my background is including all the military time, was I managed all the airports in Vermont. Why is that important? How is that relevant to here? What I found was, I'd go to one airport and they were very familiar with all of the things that they needed to do at that particular airport. What I also found was that the needs and wants that they had were very similar to the other 9 airports. And why is that important? I heard somebody saying earlier about surgery. Going and having surgery, and they'd rather go to a place that had numerous, they've done numerous surgeries of that same type, and as opposed to going to one specialist, or not a specialist, but somebody that may not have done that type of surgery over and over. Of course you want to go to somebody that's done that type of work over and over. We're very familiar with the needs and wants of a displaced threshold and the restrictions that we have on the south and the north currently, and how that is directly impacting your operations at the airport. Michael, if you could just hit one of the notes. One of the notes that we found, we did some research, and we found in the county's comprehensive plan, page 95, it specifically says that although there are 7,500 or 750 operations at the airport, the single most important constraint right now is the decreased jet traffic. As we continue to do some research into the airfield, of course the displaced thresholds are restricting that. But if you dig a little deeper, what we're also finding is that the AWAS is restricting the jet traffic, and also the ability to for apron space and future hangar development. These are things, and the AWAS, the fact that it's not producing properly right now. Just this morning we went on, and although pilots can, from a distance, pull up the weather system from a distance, it does specifically say on the instrument approach procedures that if you can't get the altimeter, this project or this particular instrument approach is non-applicable. You can't use it. Can't utilize the airport, can't fly in for instrument approach procedures. And so when folks are in the air, if they can pull it up, they'll be able to land. But the confusing part is when the schedulers and dispatchers for commercial aircraft operators are looking up if that airport's the place to bring their passengers, they're not going to see that the weather system's working, and they're also going to see that the instrument approach procedure is, you can't use it if you can't get the altimeter. So therefore, let's not send your people there. That's impacting your jet traffic. So if we go to the next one as well. Some other things in our research we pulled up, and I'm by the way, I'm big on from the top down when you're trying to do a project. It's so important that your regional plans, your county plans, and your master plans are all in a line and talking with one another. So when I started doing the research, I found that there was a brownfield revitalization plan that was recently done, and it basically says that the industrial park, the lifeblood, that incubator industrial park that's to the south, for some reason, and I'd have to dig into it more, but it says the #1 significant development limitation is its proximity to the airport. Wouldn't it be something if we could find out what that was and find out why it's a restriction and why it was listed as a constraint? So these are other things that we would look at. Go to the next one, Michael. Lastly, we found it was a comprehensive plan for 2014, and this is where, in Vermont, we took 10 airports that the legislators were saying to me, close them, literally. That legislators, senators saying to me, which airports are you closing, to 5 years later, taking 8 out of 10 airports and putting them in the budgetary black. Deep red, steep state of disrepair at the airports, to 8 operating in the budgetary black, and in 5 years we did $73 million of development on airports in Vermont over that 5-year period with discretionary funding. This is key to me when it comes to, because most engineers can design an airport, they can design a runway, that's great, it's a lane mile of pavement, really. What's important is connecting the airport's design, which is what Michael does an expert job on, to connecting it to your economic development, your in the regional plan. And when I see that there's a potential of bringing service of water and sewer, well, I think of this hangar lot right here, and I think of what if I just plopped a hangar there, a big hangar, and there's a potential for a large hangar there, but what if that individual is forced to, through permitting constraints, a fire suppression system? What if they now have to put in their own septic and water? That eats up valuable footprint that otherwise could be used as a hangar spot, an additional hangar. So we think about these things. More importantly, with all these, how we connect these dots really is that the project in Rangeley, and I would strongly encourage you, if you haven't looked at our quals, call the references. We could not have designed, permitted, and now have an application into the FAA, and I just got word from FAA yesterday, they're probably going to fund that $11.5 million runway extension, okay? Don't take that to the bank, but we feel very confident they're going to fund it. The only way we could have gotten that done is if we had, and I think you guys have an airport steering committee here. It's so important that their involvement from day one, because they are kind of the vetting process. We don't know the ins and outs of the local community. We would learn it, but they do. They're business owners, they're airport users, they're pilots, and they know the criticality of the airport and how all of these things should come together. We could not have done Rangeley, Maine without the benefit of the airport steering committee. So I'm so glad that they're here. It's so important. They're kind of the sounding board. We don't move forward unless the airport committee says that makes sense and we vet it. So I could go on, but for this particular, the operational capability or the operational potential that I see, just with some simple things like potentially moving the weather system so you have further development, there are possibilities that we would think out of the box and present to the steering committee and then eventually, of course, this board. So with that, Michael, thank you.
Let me take a couple of comments on this slide before I go to the next one. So what we've done in about a month, we've gone from not knowing a lot about the airport, not knowing a lot about the region, to making calls, making visits, digging around a little bit, trying to get an understanding of what's going on here, what your desires are. So I'm not going to tell you I know what's going on, all the details. We've hit a few high points here. But here's something that we do, and I've done this a number of times when I've gotten into an airport that's fairly new to me, which in this case has happened here, is involvement with the committees right away. If you'll have us, and I know sometimes the board would prefer the consultant not be at the steering committee or another board meeting, so it's up to you. But if you would have us, I love to come to these meetings, to listen, to sit back, because what I can do is I'm hearing what's happening in the community, I'm hearing what's happening at the airport, I'm hearing what's going on, what sort of things do we need to be thinking about. Sometimes I'll say, hey, raise my hand, I got a couple thoughts for you on that. Many times I'll be just sitting back taking it in, but what that does, by being here and observing and listening, I get a better sense of what's going on. So, if you show on your ACIP, we've reviewed your 5-year plan, you're showing all these improvements here, nowhere does it say runway extension. But as I'm talking to people here, I'm hearing runway extension. I look at your airport layout plan, it shows on there a runway extension with a note, if you're familiar with the LP, you know what I'm talking about, with the FAA saying, not eligible for funding, not currently in the plan. So, the FAA has obviously taken a look at this and saying right now, you don't have a justification for it. So I could come in these meetings to get a better sense, is that really a high priority for you? If it is, we can start throwing out some strategies on how to accomplish that. So our presence here is important. That's what we routinely do. Again, at your option, the involvement that you want for us here is what I'll provide. I mean, again, coming to these meetings to me is really important to get to know what's happening here, and that's the commitment we make for you. Another thing that we often do, again, coming into a new airport, is do what we call an action plan or an audit. And terminology is really not that important, but what we'll do is myself and Guy will actually come, spend a day or two here at the airport, talk to the administrator, talk to the steering committee, talk to the board, talk to the airport manager, Frank, and just get a good sense of what are the issues here, what's lacking. What do you really need to do to keep this airport in the black? We understand you've got a trust that you're drawing from. A trust is not, millions, so you can just say whatever I want to do, I can pull from it. There's limits on that. So with those constraints, what can I do? And we can start looking at things, just as we just talked so briefly, the AWAS, if that's not showing up on the national naming system, that's a problem. What does that mean to you? How many, operations are not coming here? Because right now they can't see that you've got the weather, the altitude is not there. Those are sort of things. We can look at some hangar development and say, hey, look, there's a program that just released, and you're probably familiar with this, New York State Capital Program that just released the 2018 program. How can I access that money? What do I need to do? We've been pretty successful in using that for things like fuel farms, T hangars, corporate hangars. These are projects that the FAA typically doesn't fund. Kind of ironic, a little side note here, one of your requirements for the FAA is to be as self-sustaining as possible, but the FAA doesn't participate in projects that help you become self-sustaining, like a fuel farm which generates revenue, like a hangar that generates revenue, so it's a little ironic there. But New York State, fortunately, has stepped up to the plate. Not lots of money, but there's still some money, and we've been successful in getting those sort of grants. So that's something you ought to be thinking about. And we understand in this area here, you've got upstate companies, has talked to you folks about some development. Certainly something you need to explore, and I'm not telling you anything new, hopefully I think you are aware of this, but these are sort of the issues that, again, as a company, what we'd like to do, if we're so fortunate to be selected here, is come in, sit down, spend a day or two here, and come up with an action plan and say, here's some things that we see, here's some things that could help you out, and then give you some ideas, some other thoughts, maybe a bit outside the box. Yeah, the next slide.
The point of that too, just to add, is some people will call it a business plan. Some people like business plans. We would do this not at a cost, because I think what it does, it gets us up to speed, it teaches us, and it tells us what the issues are. That would be the word, I guess, pro bono. We would use the word to get that done, of course.
So, just real quickly, the note, I'm a little over, I'm always over, but, I want to open it up to what other questions you want to talk about, but just a few bullets here. So, first of all, if you're looking for a consultant, they're going to have experience, obviously, right? If they don't have experience, what are you doing here? So, we've been around a while. I think someone put a quote on there, 78 years combined experience. That's a little, it makes me feel old. I'm not that old, but I've been around a while. I've been doing this for about 36, 37 years. Guy's much older, much older, so he's got this 70 years experience, right, in there. So, but we've been around, and again, I think what's a good connection here is engineering architecture over here. operations, how to run airports, a great combination. I really think that's important for you to be looking at. So I can come up with some great plans on how to design an apron, and Guy's the one that says, yeah, but how's that going to impact my operations? I want to put a hangar there in the future. How's the aircraft going to maneuver through there? What are the choke points here? Fuel system. Your fuel system's fine. No need to change it. He's going to be the one saying, okay, if you're going to change this out, don't put an 8,000 gallon tank in there. Why is that? Because what are the delivery volumes? 9,500, 10,000 gallon. You want to take that full load to get the best price off that. See, that's the sort of thinking that really, I think, going to help you here. Commitment to client service, we already talked about. We can do an action plan for you and give you an idea of what's going on there. The other thing that I think is so critical, and I tell all my clients this, as the county, if you've not been down to Long Island across the table with the FAA, who pays 90% of your projects, you got to get down there. We always push for that to happen. You don't have to go down there every year. You've got an annual meeting, and again, I don't know if you've actually been down to the Long Island recently. If you haven't, I strongly encourage that. We'll facilitate that. We'll bring you down there, because if you're looking for any major funding, and just think about it this way, getting funds from an entity, it's all about relationships. So if you pick up the phone, in this case, you'll be talking to Evelyn Martinez. If she doesn't know you, you don't know her, how successful are you going to be? If you sat across the table from her, if you've laid out your concerns, but you've also laid out your plans, here's what's happening in this community, here's what we need to do, but here's how the help I need, you've made a connection there. And that's the process, because it's all about relationships. If we can facilitate that, and again, I strongly, strongly encourage you, whether you make a change, whether you stay with what you've got, get down there, sit across the table from them. Also, let's go to Albany, not very far away. You meet with Geraldo, talk to him about funding, because you meet them, you make the connection. Comes time they have to make hard decisions, because everyone wants big money. Everyone wants the money from the FAA. They're going to start thinking about, okay, but who's made the effort? Who's come down here? Who's sat across the table and talked to me about this? And I think, yeah, this is real. This is a real opportunity here. These are things we got to be thinking about. And as far as the respecting the industry, yeah, I got a couple quotes in there. I don't want to linger on those. If you want to call some folks, please do. Ask them, because I can tell you how great I am. You can talk to my wife, and she'll say, yeah, it's okay. Talk to some of the clients and the references there and see what they say. And I think you'll find that, we know what we're doing. We have energy and enthusiasm, and I think that's one thing that we love bringing to the table, is that fresh look and sitting across saying, what can we do here? I have some clients I've worked with in the past whose idea of the airport funding is about maintenance. It's not pushing the envelope. Don't even talk about a runway extension. Saratoga County Airport, for example, a couple of years ago, through the master plan for them, they said, and I quote, when you do the master plan, do not talk about a runway extension. Well, I can not do that if you want, but you're losing revenue, there's opportunities for a larger aircraft, more fuel sales, make this more, no, don't even go there. Okay, I follow their direction. But in their case, their view was, let's just keep this status quo. I've got other airports I've worked for, and I'm thinking Ogdensburg recently, we just did a major, major program out there. Runway extension, taxiway extension, apron, relocate a state highway. And then the hardest part of this whole project, cutting trees in a cemetery. And please, there's no cemetery right near the airport.
Already coming.
Good, okay. Because how many people can get so upset about a tree that grandma's buried underneath there? That's really, really hard. So a whole gamut of activities there. The point I'm making, though, for that airport, they were gung-ho about, we want to put money into this airport. We're talking, I think it was 18 million total so far. But the number one thing that they did was get the congressional delegation together, and we all went down to the FAA's offices and said, here's what we need, here's our plan, here's how we can do it. And I'm not going to say just like that it happened. It took a while. It took a couple of years to get through the whole process, but we were able to do that because of that time commitment that we made. So some thoughts and ideas for you on that. Okay, I'm going to stop here now. We'll put that map back up there.
Yep.
And then I guess we'll just open up. Are there any questions you've got for Guy and myself? Don't follow words ever lead here.
It's notable in your proposal that the Director of Aviation Services is proposed as the continuing primary client contact. And so that's different from having a designated project manager from the staff be that contact and so on. So please tell us how you see that to be a realistic thing to propose on an ongoing basis.
Sure. Let's talk about BCA then. So You know, I joined BCA last year. I'm establishing an aviation division. Now, BCA has done aviation in the past, primarily on the survey work, architectural, but usually as a sub. In fact, BCA used to work for me about 15 years ago when we first started doing work together. So I'm establishing a group here. So I have a very small group at this point. So it's not like I'm the director of aviation, I've got 20 people working for me. I have right now 3 people that are working for me, part-time, not even full-time at this point, as I'm establishing the business. And so for me, it's critical that I stay in, hands-on, in the mix the whole time. So the one thing I can promise you this is what I do not do, I'm not gonna come in, sell my wares, and then say, I'll see you in 4 years. You know, when the term selection comes back up again, not how I do business. I mean, in fact, what I like most of all is getting in the weeds and working with you. And so the commitment I've got is I'm going to be here. You know, if you want me, I don't know about every month, that's probably a little bit too much of me, but every other month, or whatever you think is appropriate for these meetings, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be managing your jobs. I'm not just standing up from afar looking at someone doing this work. I get down in the weeds, and that's how I do it. And with the size group I've got, I have that capability and I have that commitment.
Our backdrop would be to support him. We have, my firm is 100 strong. We've been in business since 1962. My managing partner that I'm with, he's been with the company only 43 years. They've been around a very long time. I bring to Dubois and King as one of the partners is to ensure that, and the roles and expectations are, I don't want to say military-ish, but it is. You will not go a day without responding to an email or a phone call. We will be highly responsive. They know it. And that's why we are developing a lot of business with a person that I've hired not that long ago, and they're developing a lot in Maine as an example, or in New Hampshire. We will be responsive. We will backdrop and support all of the services. But we thought it makes the most sense. Michael I've worked with for years. He's years of experience. I know his response time when I've called him. And there were times when, as the aeronautics administrator, I would, my chief project manager would come to me and say, you know what, we're having problems with these other consultants, but not with Michael. And if I ever called Michael, Michael responded, and he was there in a heartbeat. Sometimes he would drive hours and hours just for a 30-minute conversation. So, hope that answers your question.
So, yeah, yes, thank you. What would be the legal entity with whom the county would contract should
BCA. BCA. So the relationship we have is not a legal contractual, you know, like a joint venture, for example. So BCA is the consultant. We would be the lead. Dubois and King would be a sub-consultant for us. And so I can't imagine a project where we would not be working together, but they would be a sub-consultant, you know, and we're just talking about legally how would this work, a sub-consultant to me. So I would be the representative, I would be the legal entity, I'd be the one contractually that you'd be, you know, working with.
Well, thank you, because that was not clear in the proposal.
Okay.
It is now.
Okay, I'm glad I clarified that. Gotcha.
A question
Yes.
for you, and grants are so important for these capital improvement projects. In there you state that you have you're known for your creative grant funding. Can you give us some examples of what you mean by creative?
Okay, so FAA, of course, is the biggest pot of money. I think anyone's familiar with the AIP program. You know, New York State has a separate program, the Capital Improvement Program, and that, again, I mentioned that briefly, that's for typically revenue-generating projects. So, not a lot of money. I've been successful in getting primarily hangars, but a couple of fuel farms as well. And to do that, I found in meeting with DOT that you really need to build a strong economic case, because when they look at funding, it's all about job creation or job retention. And so sometimes a hangar doesn't quite fit the bill there, but I can then turn around and talk about sustainability of the airport, which has, of course, then the direct impact of people working there and then having businesses locally in that area. And so it's all about building essentially a cost-benefit analysis and showing them you spent X dollars here, the hangar gets built, you've got leases, you've got fuel sales, and then you've got a corporation that moves in there that's going to bring 5 people or 10 people, and then you can start building the case there economically. Just last week I finished an application. Unfortunately, you don't fit under the category here. This is under the Northern Border Regional Commission. So it's an entity, it's not very well known, but for counties in New York, New Hampshire, Maine, and then I think out west, Midwest, there's some other states as well that apply. Counties adjacent to and proximity of the border, there's a fund of money. There's some money, not a lot of money, but you can get $300,000, $500,000 of funding for projects, again, either for security or for job creation and revenue generation. So we can look at those. We've done EDF's applications as well. And that, I think, was the most recent one I did. For Elmira Corning, we were working along with New York State. You may have been familiar, about 3 years ago, I think it was, Governor Cuomo put out it's Upstate Aviation Development, some odd acronym. We call it the Airport Hunger Games, because basically it was $40 million a shot that you could compete for. I was able to get one of those, actually two of those grants, one for Elmira Corning Airport. When I say it's really not me, it's the company. We were able to pull that together. And then we got some money up at Plattsburgh as well. But what we like to do is just get an ear to the ground and see what other funding sources are there. I've been pursuing, not successful yet, but I think I'm close, some Homeland Security funding for Watertown International Airport. And so I've got some folks in my engineering group. This is mainly water and wastewater work, but they know about other economic and rural development grants, and I like to look at all these options. Sometimes they apply, sometimes they don't. But what we like to do is see what is out there, because everyone knows the normal sources. It's us finding these oddball pots of money, and maybe it's a 50-50 share, and maybe it doesn't make sense for you. It's like, okay, I got some money, you can get $200,000. You got to pony up $200,000. Maybe that's too much, but we'll find whatever else is out there, toss it your way, and see if it makes sense.
Yeah, other creative ways of the $73 million that I was able to acquire from primarily from the FAA, and some from Northern Borders. We got $1 million from Northern Borders to do a septic system to extend, and we did an on-site septic system and an on-site renewable solar. That airport, Rutland, Vermont, you could fact check that as well, hasn't paid a power bill since December of 2015. The airport's power is now paid for through a grid-tied solar array. So there are creative ways. You guys have some natural resources over here. If you do end up doing a runway extension, we realize that most of your match money, I believe all of it, comes from, for the town, does that come from the trust? I believe. We'd have to look at that. So if there's a trust fund that needs to be drawn from, well, we don't want to draw that down too fast. There are creative ways through force account, if there are gravels and things like that, or local resources that can be drawn from, that can be used through a force account. It can minimize and lower, in fact, in some cases, all of your match money. Rangeley, Maine, not far away, similar to this, a little gravel pit kind of sitting over here. We're drawing all of their gravels for that runway extension, and it's only a $500,000, half a million cubic yards of material. It's a lot of material. They're not going to have to pay a match at all for their project. So there are many creative ways to utilize local resources, things of that nature.
Yeah, your cost schedule, I found it interesting that you said that you would come to the meetings. Sounds like a wonderful idea to me. It's sort of no charge. We're kind of cheap because we don't want the airport to cost us anything. Mm-hmm. There are varying opinions on that. That's the politics you're talking about. You're trying to develop this line of business. I think we're kind of small potatoes compared to some of the others, so I'm just curious, do you see, in looking at the airport plans, that's going to be enough to keep you going?
Oh yeah. When you say small potatoes, not small potatoes to me. I've worked at big airports, I've worked at small airports, I've worked at grass airstrips, I've worked at JFK, I've got the whole gamut here. Here, where I'm at now in my stage of life, I made a change recently to set up my own aviation group because I wanted to be able to provide service for my sweet spot, and that's GA. Really, this airport is what I love doing most of anything. I've worked for the big companies, I've worked for the big agencies, and it has its pluses and minuses, but for me, what I find rewarding is sitting down with a small airport and say, you've got X dollars, here's your wishes, how do we make that work? It's not easy, but it's fun. I really enjoy doing it. And I've got someone working with me who has that ability as well. Now, I'm working at other airports as well, in smaller roles, but for me, I want to focus on providing soup to nut services for an airport just like this. Coming to these meetings, you don't get charged for those. I mean, I may ask for a cup of coffee. If someone give me coffee, I can do pretty much anything for you guys. But that to me, that's
Donuts.
I'm so yeah. No, I don't need donuts. Look, I got to stop the donuts here. Like I say to my wife, I'm salaried. I can work all the hours I want. The company has no concern about that. I routinely put in long hours. Why? Because I love doing what I'm doing. And and I know this stuff that we do for my clients, that I'll be doing for you, I'm not going to charge. I can't come to a meeting and give you a bill. And I can do it once, right? And I'm probably done, right? That's part of the cost of doing business. I'll get you down to the FAA to meet them. You're not going to get a bill for that. Because my reward is going to be eventually I'm going to get some design work out of this. And that's how I cover my costs.
We understand how you that makes sense. Now we're going to be wrapping this up.
Oh,
Are there
okay.
any other quick questions?
It probably won't come as any surprise to you that we've been through this process before.
Yes.
And some of them were very similar, charismatic approaches, and they were going to solve all our problems, and that was.
I didn't say that, no.
Well, no, but they did. And,
Yeah, okay.
Because they were
Sure.
going, they explained how the vitality of an area was its airport, and, it should be the hub of blah, 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 blah. And that was the last kind of, I didn't say last we saw them, but, only when there was a project. So, my question is, is that it's somewhere along the way, I think you talked about some sort of a game plan, or
Yeah,
a
an
master
action plan or
mission
yes,
statement, whatever.
yes. Mhm.
And where does that come in, and how do we monitor that? Do we set up this is what we see as the things we need to do, and how do we check and see how we're doing?
Absolutely.
And would that plan say, well, with good luck or with our experience, we should be able to get this accomplished in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, so that that's where I think we've kind of lost sight of some of this, because we really don't have a way to monitor anything.
Absolutely.
The way it's been.
Let me give you a couple thoughts on that then. So, I'm not a big proponent of thick, voluminous master plans that then get set on a shelf, and then 5 years later or 10 years later you pull it off and go through and say, let's update this now. It doesn't do anything. What we're proposing here is we sit down, we go through soup to nuts, top to bottom. What we see here, we come up with a list of items. Here's the things that we see. I'm bringing them back to you. I'm sitting around the table with you in a meeting saying, here's our thoughts and observations. Are they in line with what you want to do? We'll pick 2 or 3 of these. We're going to focus on these. And so what I'm going to do then, next time I come back, I'm going to report to you. Here's what we've done. We hit a roadblock. We got to circle around that roadblock. Here's my thoughts, how we're going to do that. Okay, I'm going to come back to you. And so to me, it all comes back to being here, talking to you folks, getting that give and take, and you're knowing what's going on. So we're not coming up with some grandiose idea. I'm not going to tell you I can give you a 2,000-foot long runway extension. Just hire me and I'll get that for you. I'm not going to say that. These are not easy jobs. But if that's something that you truly desire to do, we have done in the past. We'll come up with a plan. We'll work with you. And if I hit a roadblock, and it's possible, we're going to hit a roadblock. Maybe there's some painted rare endangered turtle right at the end of the runway. And it's just not going to happen. The river. I'll talk to you about that and say, look, here's the problem. Maybe there's a workaround, maybe there isn't. But you're not going to be wondering what's going on, because we're going to be here and we're going to tell you and update you regularly what's happening. Communication.
If I could provide one response to that, it'd be very short, for 30 seconds. So I believe actions speak louder than words, and I think that if you were to call the references, call Morrisville Stowe. Morrisville Stowe, if you contact Russ Barr, he's going to tell you that we went in 2014, we fully refurbished the airport. Since then, they've had a 220% increase in aircraft activity and fuel sales. And they're now tied to the Stowe Mountain Lodge, and they've got air service development. If you call Newport State Airport and talk to Dan Govin, we did a 1,300-foot runway extension. We designed and permitted and got it out the door within an 18-month period. And he now has a 360% increase in his fuel services, and they're currently working with what would be over here IDA, I suppose, but over there, they're the Development Authority, and they are working right now on an air service development project. That's moving forward. Contact Rangeley, Maine. Talk to them about how I described earlier over a 10-month period, how we came in, we applied exactly what Mike was saying, the action plan, lined it out, got good support from the board, from the steering committee, and we executed that plan. and we communicated. That's my short.
Very-
My quick question
Sure.
is, you mentioned Vermont and Maine,
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned a couple forays into New York. You perform this function, this
Mm-hmm.
type of arrangement in New York at this point in time?
Yeah, well, as a company, no, we are a sub to my old company, Brown Johnson in Watertown, in a term agreement. But I personally, and I've been doing work in New York for 35 years.
So you did
And
it
so-
in your prior
Yes,
iteration?
yes, and I've
Okay.
overseen, I think it's 12, I total of 12 separate term agreements for airports, everywhere from, Sullivan County, Schenectady County, Watertown, where else?
Plattsburgh.
Plattsburgh, yeah. I should list so it gets old.
Ogdensburg, they call that Zeroburg up there.
See, I'm not doing as much work in Ogdensburg anymore. I'm doing more work in Watertown. There's a bit of a political conflict there, so I'm
Very
focusing
good.
on Watertown.
Too many
So,
windmills to fly over? Or
there's
what?
a big issue there, and Fort Drum, fortunately, is helping us fight that battle, but it's a battle.
All right, very good. Well, we appreciate it. We appreciate the questions.
Well, thank you for your time.
And,
Appreciate it.
we've got your card. We've got the information.
We got
our-
placemats.
we have our placemats.
Magic set there, so. Okay,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Yeah,
Nice
thanks again.
man.
Thanks
too.
again for your
You
time.
don't need those.